Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Gabriela Cubeiro, the co-founder and CEO of Kspear. We're the highest rated case management software made for personal injury law firms. And I'm really excited today to introduce you all to Alex Melehy. He's the founder and CEO of Woodpecker. It's a smart document automation software. Listen, Woodpecker's beautiful, it's powerful, and the holy grail of all technology, especially legal technology. It's easy to use. So welcome, Alex.
Thanks, Gabby. Thanks for having me.
First thing this year, CASEpeer released an integration with Zapier, as many of you know. And it's a Zapier for those of you that maybe are not aware of yet. It's a no-code automation platform that allows you to connect all the different apps in your law firm's ecosystem, right? So this has opened up many new integration opportunities for firms using Kspear, and one of them is our first phase of a Woodpecker integration, which I'm really excited about, and that's focused on lead capture. And today we're going to be going over that. So take a moment really quick, find the questions tabs off to the right. We've got a question over in the comments section or in the chat, which we'd love to hear right now. How are you currently capturing leads on your website? And let's go ahead and dive in. So Alex, what's Woodpecker? Tell us a little bit more about it. I didn't quite do it justice, I don't think. Let's get into some details.
Yeah, no worries. So Woodpecker is essentially, as you said, a document automation system that's primarily based in Microsoft Word so that folks can continue using Word, continue working where they already are on a day-to-day basis, but then allows folks to turn their frequently used legal documents into standardized templates using everything you would expect from a document automation system like conditional logic, formula calculations, a clause library, things like this, and then generate multiple documents at the same time for multiple clients at the same time, as well as create client-facing questionnaires that ultimately populate these documents for you when the questionnaires are submitted, as well as store that data for you so that you can reuse that client information later.
Very cool. Yeah. I mean, it's such a powerful tool. I think the thing that's really neat about it, that I admire from a technology standpoint, is the conditional logic and the formulas and how powerful those are. Can you give us an example of one of those? Because I think, it's nice to read that phrase on paper, but kind of hard to imagine. How does that actually work? How might a law firm use that?
Of course, yeah. So you could think of it as from something as simple as different pronouns, right? So whether you should say he or she 100 times in your document, or even if someone happens to be located in California versus Illinois, you might have to insert a specific paragraph that needs to be there if they're in a specific state, or maybe it needs to be removed. So the conditional logic there really is pretty full featured and allows you to apply it to a lot of different use cases. But the main ones are really swapping in different information depending on information that you've entered, for example, client gender, client marital status, things like this. The other piece that conditional logic really allows you to do is to take situations where you might have, say, 5 different versions of an engagement letter that are different for maybe each state or each situation that a client might be in, and consolidate all of those into one document that Woodpecker can basically manage the variable portions of for you.
Hmm. That's very cool. So today we're talking specifically about lead capture. Talk to me a little bit about the questionnaires. Like, these are things that people can put on their website, they can email them out. I know you're going to do a little demo of that as well, but how easy is it to build these questionnaires out?
Yeah, great question. So one of the things that we've really tried to build into Woodpecker, and especially into the Woodpecker questionnaires feature, is not having to do the same thing over and over again, and not having to duplicate efforts. So the way that Woodpecker questionnaires work are that ultimately they take the templates, the Woodpecker templates you've already created, and they automatically generate questionnaires and questions in those questionnaires for you based on the templates that you've already created. So it's not going to be a case where you create some templates and then you go and create a questionnaire from scratch and have to, create a client name, address, city, state, et cetera. All of those questions are going to be created automatically for you. And then you can, of course, tweak them, rearrange them, rename them, things like this. But the idea is to make the questionnaire experience as seamless as possible and to really piggyback off of the work that you've already done creating your templates.
That's really cool. I love that. So I love to ask this question every time I have technologists on a webinar. So tell me a little bit about how Woodpecker came to be.
Yeah. So for folks that don't know me, my background is in engineering, electrical engineering, software engineering, and then product management, specifically with software products. And I've always had sort of side projects on the side, but I actually had a friend at a small law firm in Boston doing family law. And she basically told me how, they really had no good solution for generating frequently used documents that wasn't find and replace in Word, right? But of course, that led to all sorts of other problems with having to review these things. Maybe you missed a client's name in one of the documents, and then you send it out to a new client by accident, and of course, that looks really bad. The existing solutions on the market were too big, right, and too costly, both from an onboarding and a financial perspective, to even consider for her small firm. So I was like, you know what? Let me see if I can help you here. If I can develop something that's Word-based, that's really intuitive, that doesn't require 12 months of onboarding and thousands and thousands of dollars to get up and running. And so we built it for them as our first beta customer, and sort of the rest is history, as they say.
That's really cool. I love that. And presumably it was it's a success. You guys are growing. What is one of the favorite features that you hear most about from law firms? I know it's not just law firms that use Woodpecker, so from all your clients.
Yeah, good question. So I think the one that comes to mind firstly is the ability to reuse client data. So as I mentioned before, we can allow folks to import their client information from whatever they might be using in terms of a practice management system, or if they are even storing stuff in a CSV and not using practice management, or if they're writing it down on sticky notes, that's fine too. We can allow folks to import their client information into Woodpecker, as well as collect that information from Woodpecker questionnaires, and then ultimately reuse that. So for example, if I send a new client a questionnaire to fill out, which generates an engagement agreement for them, I've now collected their name, address information, et cetera. And let's say 6 months down the line, I need to generate, I don't know, a power of attorney for them. I don't have to go and ask them for their information again because I already have it. So I can just click on their little their row, select power of attorney, and I can generate the document on the fly as many times as I want. So I think that's the one that probably comes to mind the most, is folks are just really excited about being able to reuse their client data.
Yeah, and I know we have a lot of Kspear customers right now on the webinar who are probably wondering, so we're talking about leads, and so I'll just lean into this right now. Right now we've tackled leads, but in the future we're looking to expose or give people the opportunity to use their content in Kspear to potentially take advantage of Woodpecker's more advanced document automation features. So obviously Kspear has a lot of that functionality built in, but being able to generate multiple documents at once, maybe some deep conditional logic. So we're excited to continue the integration. So everyone stay tuned. We always get that question, so I'll address it right away. Well, I'm excited to kind of take a look. Alex is going to show us from, we're going to look at kind of how you might connect Kspear to Woodpecker. Right now, that's happening through Zapier. What does it look like to set up the Zap in Zapier, and kind of walking us through the system of submitting the online questionnaire all the way through to the leads management in Kspear. So going from questionnaire to creating a lead, and obviously there's things happening in Woodpecker that you can do right from that questionnaire as well. So with that, Alex, I'll pass it over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Gabby. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. Oh, okay. Does that look okay?
It does now, yeah, we
Okay, yeah.
entered the
We had a
vortex
little
for a second.
infinite vortex, yeah. Okay, so basically, folks, what we're going to walk through, as Gabby said, is setting up a pretty simple connection between Kspear and Woodpecker. So the first piece here is just to know kind of where to find the stuff. So if you're in Kspear and you go over to the settings here and go to account settings, if you scroll all the way down to the bottom here, you're going to get a list of all your integrations, and you'll go ahead and click on that Manage button next to Zapier, which is going to give you your Kspear API key, which is what you'll need to actually plug Kspear into Zapier. So, of course, I've done this beforehand, so we don't waste any time setting that up. But I wanted to show kind of what this looks like as a very basic Zap, is what Zapier calls them, and they're basically automated workflows. Fortunately, we have actually already propped this Zap up for you as a template that you can use. You can find this Zap template on Woodpecker's website, as well as on Kspear's website, or on the landing pages on Zapier for either Kspear or Woodpecker. So it's pretty easy to find. If you can't find it, of course, we can send you the link afterwards. But basically what's happening here is that we've said, okay, when a new Woodpecker questionnaire, right, and I've created a Woodpecker questionnaire, which I'll show you here in a second, and it's basically just a client intake questionnaire. I said, when the new questionnaire is submitted in Woodpecker, let's first make sure that it's the client engagement agreement questionnaire, just so that we don't do this for any other questionnaire besides that one. And then lastly, I'm basically going to create a lead in Kspear with the information that is submitted in that Woodpecker questionnaire. And that's essentially it. So it's a very basic automated workflow here, and I promise it's very easy to set up. But once again, we've got a template that we've already created that you can actually just click on, and it'll set this up for you. Okay, so if we pop over to the Woodpecker questionnaire, for those that aren't familiar, this is what a Woodpecker questionnaire looks like. Of course, you can always custom brand this with your logo and your firm name here, but this is what you would actually show or send to a client. And ultimately, what the client's going to do is they're just going to fill out this information here. So I'm going to actually fill it out so we can see it come through. Let's say it's the 22nd. Let's say it's Alex, and then here's my last name. I'm going to do an address. Let's just say it's Boston. And we're going to do a gender. And we'll select marital status. And you can see that when I select married here, the spouse name field or a spouse name question pops up conditionally. So that's another example of a conditional piece of logic that you can use to do dynamic questions based on answers to other questions. So let's just say Jane Doe. And I'm going to submit this questionnaire. So what's going to happen is a couple of things. First, the engagement agreement that I've set up is going to get generated behind the scenes here. And I'll show you exactly what that looks like just as a quick preview. It's going to get generated and it's going to get emailed to me, the questionnaire creator, so that I have it and I can now do whatever I want with it. The second piece that's going to happen is that we're going to collect that information that was submitted from the questionnaire, and we're actually going to, if you remember our Zapier flow, we're going to actually pass it over to Kspear. So
I have a couple questions here,
sure.
Alex. So two things. One, so you pulled up that questionnaire. Walk us through how might law firms be putting this questionnaire into prospective clients' hands or new clients' hands?
Great question. So essentially, the Woodpecker questionnaire link can be shared however you want. So if you want to, you can email it to a client. You could even put it on your website. So actually, I've got a little example of what that might look like. This is actually a customer of ours, Martin Algie. And on his website, down at the bottom, he's got a little start assessment button here. And if we click on that, it's actually going to take us to a Woodpecker questionnaire. But of course, he's got his logo here. And he actually uses this for lead generation. And this creates a couple of documents for him behind the scenes. But this is kind of an example. So what we suggest to folks is put the link on your website. If you don't want to do that, you can easily just email it to people.
Yeah, and that's actually really cool thinking about his use case. It looks like he might even do some like mass tort stuff, or at least what it looks like for us. And there's a lot of information you typically want on those to actually evaluate if it's a case or not. So, someone's willing to, sometimes people want to pick up the phone and talk to you. Other times they just want to fill out a questionnaire and get all those details too in their own pace. So very cool. It even looks like something you might be able to text someone over, like it's just a link. So they could open this up on their phone too, right?
Exactly. Yep. They're all mobile enabled and responsive, so folks can fill them out on whatever device that they're on.
That's very cool. The other thing I was thinking about as you pulled it up, since the integration, I've been talking to a lot of law firms about Zapier, and a lot of them think, oh gosh, it's like another thing that I've got to pay for. It's another thing I've got to do. And from my perspective, there's just so much you can do with it. It can save so much time. It's such a great investment. I was thinking about, hey, someone fills out this form. You could set up a Zap to trigger a Slack notification or send you a text message. Like, there's so many options that you can do, and I get really excited thinking about the other automations, not just the one we're talking about today.
Exactly.
All right, I'll pass it back to you, Alex.
Yeah, no problem. So if we want to see, we ultimately want to kind of tie a bow on this here. So if we come back over to CASEpeer, and I go to my leads page, which will be under management and then leads. Just going to refresh it here, and what I would expect to see is my my lead here that just got created. So you can see that here's my name, here's some date information, some dummy injury description, accident description stuff here. You can see that it came from Zapier, and that it was actually from a Woodpecker questionnaire. So that's sort of the final piece here after this workflow is run, is we basically create the lead in Zapier now. And then finally, those documents, which have gotten emailed to me, but I've downloaded them in advance just so we can take a look. That final document, if we just open this guy up, should look very similar to this, except that I used some different information. But the idea is that my name, Alex Melehy, would be in here. The address that I put in would be in here. And then any other information that populates this document would be here as well. So once again, this final document or final documents, if you generated multiple, would get emailed to you. And then the lead is going to get created in CASEpeer as well.
That's very cool, and I'll highlight too that we're looking at a way to capture those documents upon the submitting of the questionnaire, so that when you go in from here to create the case from the lead, it could automatically save those documents to a case. So stay tuned on that. We're looking for a way to layer that in, of course.
Exactly.
For now, you could drag and drop them into your document storage if you use Kspear, add it in there, or of course, if you use OneDrive, Dropbox, have them stored in there. Alex, do you have integrations with like these cloud-based document storage providers?
So we do via Zapier, actually. So ultimately, if folks wanted to store documents in something that was a cloud-based document storage provider, they could do that via Zapier, and you would do that here by just say adding an extra step. You could add on Dropbox or OneDrive or Google Drive or whatever you like. And the step here, this Woodpecker step, actually will provide a link to the final document, which you can just pass into that final step here in Zapier.
Yeah, we've got a great question coming in that I think we can lean into. So many PI clients or prospective leads might be someplace where they are having issues filling out documents. Do you have any recommendations for things like that? Whether it's a language barrier or technology barrier, how have some of your law firms kind of handled that?
Yeah, so I think that if ultimately with the Woodpecker questionnaires, right? They're meant to be pretty, they're meant to be very, very accessible, right? What we have recommended for folks when they're dealing with folks that maybe are non-native English speakers or things like this is that there's ultimately Woodpecker doesn't provide the ability to translate questionnaires, but Chrome does. So ultimately, what we've sort of walked folks through is providing a questionnaire to someone and then instructing them how to tell Chrome to translate this into Spanish, for example, and then immediately now your questionnaire is in another language.
It's really neat. That's a very cool feature. I love that. That's something that I'll store away for my own uses. That's really cool. Yeah, and I mean, I think the fact that it's accessible on a phone is really important too. A lot of times that's the main issue. People don't have a computer, or they're not at a computer. And the thing I get excited about, which is like even the functionality for Kspear right now, being able to text the e-signature document if you utilize it, or e-signature, is that you can have a lead or a prospective new client on the phone and guide them through the process, and they can be anywhere, right? They can be sitting in their Starbucks filling this out. They can be anywhere where they have reasonable internet access, right, to be able to access the form and submit it in a secure way. So, but I love it. Keep the questions coming. Ooh, we've got a good question here. Speech to text. I'm guessing this is also going to be a browser related functionality, but curious what your response would be. What about speech to text feature for anyone who potentially has a hand injury, or has a serious injury where they are unable to type or use a keyboard, or obviously type on their phone after an accident?
Yeah, great question. So the first thing that comes to mind to me is I am fairly sure there's a Chrome feature for this, right, that allows
Hmm.
you to do speech to text. I haven't used it myself, but I'm fairly sure there is. If there isn't, I'm almost positive that there's a Chrome extension that would actually do it for you. So if I were this person, I won't do it right now. I would just Google a speech to text Chrome extension, and that
Hmm.
probably is going to allow folks to actually like speak and then have it just automatically entered into one of these fields here.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. And that might be good if you're at a firm where this is something that comes up, which any PI firm, like it could happen anytime, or work comp, right? Bird injuries in a workplace, like is the first thing that comes to mind, or something like that. Looking ahead and kind of having that as something that you can guide people towards. It's not only going to help facilitate your communications, but it's also going to help them with all of their communications. And I know that the Apple, like on an iPhone, I mean, a lot of phones have speech to text functionality, and having like a link to the step-by-step guide on how to activate those things, really helpful, I think, to have that at your fingertips, ready to send out to people, because again, it's not just helping them with your communication, but across the board. We have another good follow-up question here. Like staff, like attorneys could help fill this out theoretically to collect. So if they have someone on the phone, they can use this as a guide while they have the client on the phone and fill it out themselves, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and actually, that's a really interesting use case. So a lot of our customers, they'll have internal questionnaires, right,
Mm-hmm.
where maybe they want to expose the generating of documents internally to folks without them having to, worry about opening Word or even opening the document. And so someone
Mm-hmm.
can actually internally fill one of these out. But also, in this case, right, in the engagement agreement case, you could easily pull up this questionnaire here because you've got the link and maybe you bookmark it, right? You click a little
Mm-hmm.
star here to bookmark it, and you could have the client on the phone and fill this in as you're talking with them, right? And maybe if they don't
Mm-hmm.
know something, that's okay. You skip it and you submit this, and then ultimately that initial document's generated, sent to you, and now you can go from there and you've created a first draft.
Yeah, I actually think that's a fantastic use case for a lot of PI firms, kind of knowing how that intake process works. You can, while you're on the phone, get it 95% perfect, make any necessary tweaks you need to the CFA if there's additional things, and then send it out. And this is especially the case, depending on how sophisticated your CFA or retainment agreements are. I know some firms have them very basic, and it's just sort of name, date. Other times you want more information in there, and in those cases something like this could be very helpful. I love that.
Exactly.
Great questions. Feel free to keep chiming in. I'll go ahead then, Alex, and we'll jump back into the presentation.
Sounds good. Thanks, Gabby.
Yeah. So I just want to, give a big shout out to Woodpecker. I've seen them. I first saw Woodpecker in 2020 at ABA Tech Show. It was the last conference before the world shut down. And, I wrote down two companies that were up and coming that caught my eye, and Woodpecker was one of them. So really excited, Alex, to see the growth and to see the waves that you're making in the legal world. And even again, I think it's so fascinating to see use cases outside of legal, even though that's the market that you've built it for.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you, Gabby. It's been been a wild ride, and we're super excited for the future and for continuing to grow, especially working alongside folks like Kspear.
Yeah, and the deeper integration I think between the two products will be really exciting. So everyone, stay tuned. So here's a link where you can learn more about Woodpecker. We'll drop it into the chat link as well. There's some special pricing for those of you that are Kspear customers. So go over there and check it out. It's just something that I recommend doing a demo and seeing kind of what the possibilities are. And I look forward to sharing Woodpecker more with you guys as we deepen the integration. And here's the way that you can get a hold of us, Alex. You're comfortable with people emailing you, tracking you down on LinkedIn, social media?
Of course, feel free.
Awesome, perfect. And likewise, thank you everyone for joining us today. This was really fun. If you have any follow-up questions at all, feel free to either reach out through the Woodpecker website at woodpeckerweb.com. Of course, email Alex. Feel free to email me, and I'll pass any questions on if they're Woodpecker specific, or if it's anything as it relates to Kspear. Please don't hesitate to reach out to our team. Alex, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Gabby. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
All right, and thank you, Helen and Maria from our team, for moderating today over in chat and questions. Thanks, everyone.